Welcome to Heels, Handbags, and Hustle. Step in faith, carry love, pursue God's calling. This is your host, Rachel Earp, and I'm so delighted that you found my show. My podcast is dedicated to encouraging women to be more bold, confident, and secure in their work and femininity. I've had the privilege of bringing on many outstanding women who share their journeys, stories, and successes with us. I believe women should embrace their God-given gifts and abilities without the entanglements of fear, comparison, or past mistakes. As a wife, business owner, and mom of 2 boys, one with Down syndrome, I have found such joy in the community of supportive women. My prayer is that this podcast elevates each person who listens and inspires a closer walk with God. Now, let's get to it, friends. Well, hello, everyone. I just want to welcome you to today's episode. I'm really excited to just bring on a friend of mine that is just so beautiful in every way. I know you're going to really enjoy her story and just all of the wisdom that she will be sharing with us today. So I'm going to let my friend Andreea introduce herself, because there is nothing like hearing it straight from the horse's mouth, as they say. Andreea, welcome to the show. I just want to thank you for spending time with us today, and I'm excited to get into our conversation.
Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to be here. I am just excited to have this conversation. A little bit about me. So I grew up in Romania. I moved to the US when I was 11, struggled through that, immigrant, learning English, all that kind of stuff. Eventually, went to university. I got my degree in finance. I love money, numbers. I nerd out over all of that. I married a very handsome man, and we started a business together in real estate. And then we've been traveling for a couple of years until we finally settled down. We were in Canada for a little while, and now we are in Arizona. But we love doing life together. We've been married 15 years now. We just celebrated our 15-year anniversary and actually renewed our vows as well. And I guess the ethos of our life is give, gratitude, growth. So giving first and not expecting to receive, always seeking gratitude, and then always looking to grow.
Wow, that is amazing. So I want to back up, and I'm just picturing you as an 11-year-old coming to just someplace different. And of course, when you watch the movies, you always think like you're coming over on like this boat. It's this big, but tell me I've never put myself like fully in what that would look like for you. So what was it like coming over here? You said you had to learn a new language. How was that? What did that look like for you on the day-to-day as a young girl?
I mean, just being completely transparent, it was hard. Like my first year here was very hard. In Romania, I had a lot of friends. I grew up in church, so I had my Sunday school friends, and then of course my friends from school. And I wasn't like the popular kid, but like, I had my group of friends, and I could always hang out and play and talk. And I came here, and I remember I was in the 6th grade, and I had to sit with a teacher at lunch because nobody else would sit with me. Going from, having all these friends and being very confident in who you are to all of a sudden nobody's talking to you because you're the odd kid out who doesn't speak English. And so I struggled through that for probably about a year, 6 months to a year. I mean, you pick up English quite quickly at that age, but I was in ESL classes, and obviously that accelerated that growth. And then eventually I did start making friends, but I had this huge gap. I felt this huge missing piece in my life for a very long time, just because it was such a sudden transition. And, just to give your listeners a little bit of background, the reason my parents left Romania to come to the US is in search of opportunity, because they thought this would be a better country for my siblings and I. I have a brother and a sister, and they really wanted to give us a better life. But obviously, there's short-term pain and there's sacrifice you have to make when you're making that kind of a move. And I certainly felt it. My parents felt it. My siblings felt it. But we were willing to push through that because we knew on the other end, it would be such a beautiful thing and such a beautiful life.
Wow. And that takes a lot of, I think, when you're able to, especially when you're making decisions for your family, but also being able to move outside of your comfort zone. And I imagine too, as being a younger girl, I don't fully recognize what that looks like and the reasons why. It's just like, this is a big disruption in my life, but you adjusted and, you made it through. So tell me how did you get interested in, you mentioned you love like all things money. What drew you towards that? I just kind of want to pivot to that part of your life really quickly.
Yeah. I don't know. From when I was a very young girl, I just liked numbers. When I was in school, math was my favorite class. I was very good at problem solving. And I remember even in Romania, my mom would come home and she would bring her paycheck. Well, she got paid in cash. And I would sit there for hours just counting the money, arranging it. You know, there's like a little serial number on every banknote. I would sit there, alphabetize it, like organize all the money in alphabetical or whatever, numerical order. And so I just remember from a very young age, I always liked money. I always liked numbers. And my sister she's 10 years older than me, so I had somebody to look up to, but she pursued a career in accounting. And especially in my high school years, I was like, I don't know about accounting. You know, it sounds interesting, but I don't know if that's what I want to do. And then I was introduced to finance and I was like, this is my jam. Because finance is all about investing. It's all about looking at different risk profiles. And so I really like that aspect more than just, more record keeping, which is really what I decided to pursue a career in finance. Something that's really interesting that I forgot until recently, but because we had moved here and my parents couldn't speak English, I was their translator essentially after I learned English. And so they had to refinance their home at one point. I'm very grateful we were able to buy a home shortly after we moved here. Our family helped us and we ended up my parents refinanced their mortgage, but I didn't know what a mortgage was. I was probably 13 at the time and I just had to translate. And the loan officer looked at me and she's like, you know more about mortgages than some adults because I had to learn it as a kid because my parents needed me. And so I think that really accelerated and kind of put that desire in me to pursue my finance career not that mortgages are finance, but obviously it's all tied together, buying real estate and things like that.
Yep. So when you started moving into that, what were some of the biggest challenges that you felt like the average person was facing in that realm? Like, I'm assuming that a big part of your heart for wanting to pursue that, besides it was kind of just a passion of yours, but I know just from my observation of everything that you do, that you have a huge heart for helping people also in those ways. And I would love for you to share and kind of touch on the pain points that you see, especially as like a common denominator in society, and what are some of the things that you do to actually help people with those things?
That's a great question. So it's interesting because I haven't always seen this angle or this perspective, especially as I was, just starting out my career. But the whole make money matter aspect of making money, because you can make money, you can enjoy money, but at the end of the day, you're going to feel empty inside if that's all you're doing. You need to have a purpose that's greater than yourself. I believe that's the only way you can get fulfilled. So making money matter. So using the gifts, the talents you've been given to help other people. I realized, like I said, recently, I knew this, but I didn't see the perspective the way I do now, is that's where you find true fulfillment. So it doesn't matter what toy you're buying. It doesn't matter what cars you might have in the driveway, how big your house is, if that's all your pursuit. And so when does your pursuit end? When do you find that fulfillment? And I realized that the only way I'll find fulfillment is when I start to help others, when I make decisions with my money that are actually helping somebody else, that's contributing to society, making my money matter. And it's more than just making a profit. When I was in corporate, I left my career in 2020, but I was at Quicken Loans, and our founder, Dan Gilbert, came up or coined this term, there's nonprofit, and we were for more than profit because we had a community aspect. We were paid as an employee. I was paid paid, and I don't remember how much or how many hours, but I was paid to go and volunteer in our community. We were in downtown Detroit. For those of you who know downtown Detroit, depending on the area, it can be a little bit rough. So we would go and clean up neighborhoods. We partnered up with local charities and cleaned up neighborhoods and cleaned up schools, things like that. And so being a for more than profit, to Dan Gilbert was allowing his employees to go and clean up these suburbs. And so for me, I've always had, this kind of outlook of the money's not for me because it's not going to bring me joy. It's going to help my life. Certainly, we all need money, but there's got to be something else that you're working towards. And your life goal and your purpose shouldn't be to just make more money. There should be something else attached to that.
Wow, I love that. I love that. Make your money matter. And I think that it's a trap that is easy to fall into. And I'm going to say a big part of the reason why people kind of lose that perspective is definitely in this that they attain, but then everything else that's surrounding that is not fruitful. Yeah. So it's really, you have to separate both of those two things and look at all of the fruits. And I think too, coming from, for me, and kind of my background and upbringing, I mean, it was just a very modest, mom stayed at home. My dad was blue collar, and we shopped at yard sales. And I grew up where, especially in in churches and stuff, where it's kind of more frowned upon if you are in that realm and being successful. So it was difficult for me when I met my husband. So kind of a side story. And he's, his business and everything started to really take off. It was difficult for me to look at it in the way that you were just talking about, where your money matters, because to me, it was always so frowned upon, where the dollar sign was just being frivolous or being lavish or selfishness, where all you cared about was things and the gratification that came with it. But there is so much more depth to it than people realize, and so much more meaning behind it. So how do you help people change their mindset from either one extreme or the other and kind of meet in the middle? Like, what are your words of wisdom for people that feel like they're stuck in one of those types of viewpoints?
It's funny. How do you change somebody's mindset? It's actually really hard to do that.
Is it even possible? I mean,
everybody has a journey of their own. And I also want to clarify, it doesn't have to be one or the other. It doesn't have to be the cars, the boats, the planes, the houses, or just giving money to charities. Like, it can be an and, right? And I think that's the important thing that I want to clarify here. And my own process of going through that, and I didn't, go too extreme on the luxury and buying things. I've just never been a super materialistic person. But I think in some cases you need to check the box, right? If you're struggling with, hey, I'm making all this money, but maybe my friends and family, they're more modest and they view me as just being extravagant and I shouldn't be buying this car. Like, I remember we were in a blue collar town and my husband was going to buy a car and he wanted a Range Rover. I don't remember which kind, but we were in basically Motor Town, right across from Detroit, Windsor, Ontario. And so it would be frowned upon, especially if he showed up to a client meeting and he was driving a Range Rover. So what did he do? He ended up getting a Grand Cherokee because it was blue collar in a blue collar town. We had the Chrysler plant. We were supporting the local economy, but that's not really what he wanted.
Yeah.
So after that, he went and he actually bought a Lamborghini a few years later. So that was a complete, the opposite side. Yeah. But I think it's important you check those boxes, because otherwise, you want to enjoy the fruit of your labor 100%. And God wants us to enjoy the fruit of our labor. Yeah. And so you have to find that happy medium of, okay, maybe I'll check this box for a season, but it doesn't mean I'm putting all my money or all my possessions into, or I'm buying all just the possessions. It can be, hey, I'm going to set aside 10% of my net worth and I'm going to go and buy something really lavish just to get it out of my system. Sometimes you need to get it out of your system. And it almost feels like that's what it was for us, because we had at one point, don't ask why, but we had 6 cars in the driveway. Ben had 2 motorcycles. We had a big house that we only had 2 people living in, way too big for us. And now we live in a 1,400 square foot apartment. We have one car because we're both driving from home. I think Ben's probably going to buy a bike. That's probably the only thing that's missing. But we went from one extreme to the other. But we had to check that box for us to get to the point where it's like, okay, those things are cool and you can have them, but they're not ultimately what matters in life. And we learned that 6 cars in the driveway, that just means you have to do oil changes once a month because, or, going to get your registrations at the DMV is a pain in the butt. Yeah. And so it just ended up being more chores. So I was like, I want to actually simplify our life. Yes. And I think what helped us do that was when during 2020, during COVID, we left Canada. We went to Florida it was supposed to be a 2-month trip, as we were renovating our house. And we were like, why are we going back to Canada? It's cold, it's COVID. And so we ended up staying in Florida for almost 6 months. And at that point, we were living out of my car, which is a small SUV. And we had 2 luggages with our dog living in hotels and Airbnbs. And we're like, what do we have all this stuff in Canada? Right. Like, we don't need it. And we were so happy to just be in Florida and really it changed my mind about having possessions and having stuff. To me, it feels like clutter because then you just have more things to take care of. Yep. And so going back to your question, how do you get somebody into that kind of a mindset? You almost can't. You have to let them have their own journey. I had my own journey, but what I'll say is I don't want anybody to think that you can't have both, because if you do want the car and the house and all the things, it's okay to want those things. I'm just saying that's not ultimately what will make you happy. You have to find your source of happiness from somewhere else. And I don't think it's buying things. But if you want to have the things and you're pursuing your happiness, your purpose through another form, then I think you can be happy and have both.
You're so right. It really, truly is a journey, and it's going to look differently for all of us. I know, kind of looking back and reflecting on some different pieces of my journey with my husband on this kind of matter. We've learned, I don't know if it's just because we're getting old. It's like the older you get, you start getting all this wisdom. And no, I think what it is we talk about this a lot. And I remember there was this conversation we had one night on the couch. And like you said, we've had our things too. But what it really boils down to is the freedom. Mm-hmm. And for us, that is what really truly mattered, was the more that we realized the blessings that can come with working hard and God blessing that work, but also being wise and using wisdom and how you spend your money, how you invest your money, who you're surrounding yourself with, who you're partnering with in life and in business. And you're going to learn all of those things the hard way. More and more, we just wanted to have more time. Yeah. And we found that time was extremely precious, especially, for in our situation, having 2 little ones, one with the special needs, was we wanted time and we wanted to travel more. And there's certain things that in our priority list that started adding up and our focus started shifting. And like you said, I think you can't play the comparison game when it comes to money, but really anything in life. That's where it gets you, is when you're comparing your situation, your journey, your desires, your relationship with God, your relationship with money, whatever that is, to someone else's. Yeah. And that is a trap that doesn't get you very far. It ends up making you very miserable. And, you really can't do that. But it's hard because we live in a society where everyone loves to tell you their opinions and what you should and shouldn't do with your money, right? So that's hard.
Yeah. Well, so comparison is the thief of joy, right? I find myself sometimes, if I spend too much on social media, which, by the way, I think everybody should do a social media detox, because I am very good about protecting my energy and protecting what I put in my brain. But sometimes even for me, it's unavoidable where I see a post or I see a political thing or I see whatever. And then all of a sudden I find myself and I'm in a bad mood. And I'm like, why am I in a bad mood? Was because of whatever I just saw on my phone a minute ago. And so I think it's important that we take time and really disconnect, because the more you look at somebody else's life, you're only seeing a highlight reel, but you might be sitting in in misery. I hate to say that, because you're looking at what somebody else is doing and how fun their life looks like, but you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes, and you're just comparing that to yourself. And I think it's definitely important you kind of do your own thing. If you're going to be on social media, if you're doing it for business purposes, that's cool. Just don't try to compare yourself, and definitely don't spend too much time on it, because it's consuming you. And it's bad, right? Like, we're created to create. We're not created to consume. So what you're doing when you're just scrolling is really just consuming, instead of taking your time and your resources and your talents to create.
Yeah, that's really true. And you think about years past before social media, you learned about people through if they wrote a book.
Yeah.
Or if there was a movie about their life, or a memoir, or who you were personally surrounded with. That was the connection. And even though it's super fun to see what everyone's up to all the time and what they're doing next, like you said, there needs to be a very healthy balance. And you have to truly protect that, especially for like our younger people that are growing up and they're like born into it, like just from day one, like this is the normal.
Yeah.
You have to work overtime to protect from that, because that can definitely be a trap. And I love that you use that word detox, because it is so important to detox so many different things in our life, from our mindset to who we're hanging around sometimes, all of those things, even how we're spending our time. Is this a good use of my time?
Yeah.
Because we don't have a lot of time on this earth. We're not promised, an abundance necessarily of years or anything like that. So time is very precious.
Yeah. And just like you're doing a detox on social media, maybe you need to do a time audit. That's something I've done before. And actually, we were on a call this morning with, I lead a community for women, accredited females, and we were just talking about doing a time audit. And I was like, hey, I have a template for you, because I've personally done it. So I'm not preaching what I don't do, right? I'm telling people, do a time audit, because I've done one, and it's very helpful to see, one, where does your time go? Because everybody's like, I don't have time for this. I don't have time to work out. I don't have time to do this. But you do. You're not protecting your time, and you're wasting it by, maybe spending time on social media, by getting distracted by the TV, by who knows. There's so many different things that become a distraction. And I read a quote once, and it's, if the devil can't tempt you, he will distract you. And I can honestly say that in my life, because I'm very good at, okay, right or wrong. I grew up Christian. I grew up knowing Jesus my whole life. And so, the devil will try to tempt me, but most of the time I'm like, bye, but then I'll find myself distracted. I'm like, okay, this is his way of sneaking in, because I'm distracted from using my precious time. We only have 24 hours in a day. When you think about that, it's, and you sleep how many hours? 8 hours if you're lucky, right? And so our time is very precious. You need to do a time audit and figure out, where are you wasting time? Where are you getting distracted? And find ways to reduce those distractions in your life.
Yep. So good. So good. So, kind of leaning more towards, the habits of money and spending, and how to invest, or for people that struggle, with all of the different, bombarded with stuff all of the time, people that will tell you how to spend it or how to invest it. What is some advice you could give someone who maybe they're just seeing a huge breakthrough in their business, and they just don't know what to do with it? You know how there's some people that, like, if you, like, for example, the ones that win the lottery and they go out and they blow their money on, like, it's all gone in like a day. Like, that's not a good thing to do. But, for some people, they're not born gravitated towards it or understanding it fully. So what advice do you give someone? Let's kind of pivot more towards entrepreneurs or business owners, small businesses. Okay, I see you doing this.
Yeah, so, it's my favorite topic to talk about.
Yes. Okay, wonderful. Yeah, take it. Let's hear it. What's your words of wisdom?
Okay, so I'm just going to start out saying that I'm so grateful to my parents because they really taught me good money habits from when I was little. And I don't care if you make $5 or if you make $1 million or if you make $100 million. You can be a multi-millionaire and be completely broke because of poor money habits, poor spending habits, and lack of budgeting. So with everything, when it comes to money, like I said, I don't care how much money you make, you need to find a way to manage your money. And if you don't have that skill set, find somebody who does, especially if you make a lot of money. You can hire some really good accountants, some really good tax advisors or wealth advisors, and let them manage your money for you. Because that's why when somebody wins the lottery, the money's gone right away. Yeah. Because what happened? Well, they probably didn't make a lot of money to begin with. They took a gamble when they bought that lotto ticket. Then they win. But they're still not good money managers. They're still gambling when they won with whatever big payout they got. And so they're likely just going to waste that money because they're gambling it away. They don't have good money habits. They don't know about investing. They don't understand managing. So the 4 basics of money are make money, manage money, multiply money, and then make it matter, like we talked about. So you can't do, making money matter if you don't have it or if you don't manage it. You can't multiply it. That's a fancy way to just say investing. You can't multiply your money if you don't manage it or if you don't make it. So I think those steps are very important in that exact order. First, make money. Obviously, you can't sit on your couch all day. Like, you're not going to have money to live. That's very basic, right? I feel like that's common sense. Everybody knows that. So make money, but then you have to manage it. So what does that look like? Are you swiping your credit card every time you have an instinct? Are you, do you seek that instant gratification, which right now that is so easy to do with how easy it is with your Amazon app, with your online orders, everything. Like, how easy is it for us to get that instant gratification? Because we see something and then immediately we buy it. But you have to be mindful of, do I have this money in my bank account? Let me not seek that instant gratification. Let me sacrifice today's money so that I can have more tomorrow. And that is when Ben and I started out, when we first got married, we lived in a duplex. We had tenants living above us, paying our mortgage, and we essentially lived for free. We had our utilities and whatever other bills, but we were able to sacrifice early on so that we could save our money, so that we could invest it, which ultimately gave us financial freedom. So you have to learn how to manage that money. And if your parents didn't teach you how to do it, there's plenty of courses out there, free courses, Dave Ramsey, like there's so many different resources, especially in this day and age. Anybody can do it. It just takes discipline. And I think that's what a lot of people lack when it comes to a lot of areas in their life, but especially money. They lack that discipline.
Mm-hmm. So true. And like you said, the instant gratification is it's just rampant. Like, it's so easy. And not only that, but a lot of like even the apps and things where you get the reminders, oh, you left this in your cart, or, there's
smart marketing, but not for my budget.
I mean, you have the ads that pop up when you're on social media. You have ads on, television or just everywhere. Or even, the ones that promise you this if you do it, like, oh, if you invest in this, you're going to achieve this, or the most beautiful skin, or it's everywhere. So like you said, discipline, but that, having discipline, a lot of people struggle with that. And I know there's been parts of my life that I've struggled with having discipline. How do you, that is like the obscure word, discipline. How do you actually have discipline? Where you can actually take your willpower and stop yourself from doing something you shouldn't. Like, do you have a secret for that?
So I think discipline, whether it's in money, whether it's, I've had a fitness journey recently. So discipline just in general, there's always there's always a pivot. There's always a moment when you're like, something needs to change. You're unhappy about something. So you have a why, and that's your motivation that gets you started. My first fitness coach told me motivation gets you started, but discipline keeps you going. And I think use that motivation up front to be like, okay, I'm going to get this in order. I'm going to build these habits. And that's really what discipline is building habits in your daily life. So from a fitness standpoint, it's like, I'm going to get 12,000 steps a day. That's what I'm at right now. I'm going to get 3 workouts in a week. That's my daily habits. And then getting my water. And then of course, looking at my diet. So creating these daily habits, and sometimes they're daily, sometimes they're, 3 times a week or whatever, but checking the box every time. And for some people, if you're a visual person, it's almost easier if you just print out a piece of paper with all these habits and you're literally just checking them off every single day. But it's also the discipline aspect is also thinking about what happens if I don't do it, right? Because a year from now, you'll wish you started today.
Yeah.
So thinking about your future self, that's one aspect that I love to talk about and frankly to think about. A year from now, is that Andreea going to be happy with the decisions I'm making today? Whether it's my money, whether it's my fitness, whatever area. So a year from now, whatever I'm doing today will either benefit me or it'll set me back. So having that long-term vision and thinking about it from a long-term standpoint, which is, again, very hard to do, to think long-term. We're all in this like now society, want it now, got to do it now, live for the moment, YOLO. So you don't think about the future, right? And I think I want to reframe that for the listeners. I want you to start thinking about your future self. Will your future self thank you for the decisions you're making today? Or will your future self be upset and wish you would have started today?
That is so good. I literally could take that phrase and just frame it. Like, that's really good. That's really good. And it's really true. Those sometimes, and a lot of these things, I dare say we might have heard bits and pieces of, but sometimes you just need to let it sink in and process it, and then you have to apply it. There's a lot of the self-help books out there. There's coaches, there's, like the podcasts, there's so many resources and things right at our fingertips. It's so easy to find a lot of the answers that we're looking for. I think the biggest issue that we have and that we see is the applying of it.
Yeah.
And, you can, like that old saying goes, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Right.
And that's frustrating, and I'm sure, when you're trying to help people and you tell them from a place of, hey, I have been where you're at, and this is what I wish that I could have told, myself years ago. If I could have given myself any advice, it's this. But you have to have that desire for change. You have to have that want. It has to be stronger than that instant, going back to the instant gratification thing, is there has to be a bigger picture and a bigger purpose. And you have to define what that looks like for your life. You have to really strip everything away and quiet those distractions. We were just talking about distractions, but more and more, I have learned that you do have the power and ability to quiet a lot of the distractions and a lot of the noise. Yeah. It's not a crutch and an excuse to sit where you're at because, this person distracted me, or this app popped up with this ad and it distracted me, so I went and bought something that I shouldn't, or, my spouse is consuming this big piece of pizza and I want that pizza, so now I'm going to eat it too, and it's his fault.
It's so bad.
All of
this happens all the time.
Yes, it does. Some things you can't control. However, you can control how you respond to it, and it's the responses that every moment you're going to evaluate. Okay, this just happened. Even if you have to remove yourself from the situation a little bit, okay, this is going on, this is happening, this is tempting. Maybe I should get up and walk away, or maybe I should get off my phone. Maybe I should delete this app.
Yeah.
Maybe there's so many little things, those little steps. And I was having this conversation with a friend, and there's this really old song that my mom used to sing when I was a little girl called Little is Much When God is in It.
Oh,
and I remember it's a really good song. And the little is much part, though, I never really understood as a child. But more and more, I'm starting to realize those little steps is what makes huge change and huge progress. And especially if we're going to kind of pivot this a little bit into when you invite God into your decisions, when you invite God into your relationship, into your finances, into your parenting, into the innermost parts of your heart where, you know, we struggle with, and know that, you know, God sees the bigger picture and he wants good things for your life. He wants good things for his children.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, everyone defines what good things is a little bit differently, but I think in general, he wants you to live an abundant life.
Yes.
But when we're constantly in that deficit mindset, you don't live abundantly. You're not thinking abundantly. You're not acting in abundance either. So I think you have to invite God into, I mean, I truly have seen the more, and I thought I was doing that for a really long time. And then all of a sudden, and I had one of those epiphanies, and I realized I actually wasn't doing that like I should.
Yeah.
So
I posted this recently. I just celebrated my 36th birthday, and I was reflecting on my birthday, and I'm like, have I done enough? Like, you know, that overachiever in you is like always wanting to do more, and you never feel like you've reached your potential. And I don't know if you ever feel like you will reach your potential. But as I was reflecting on, hey, 36 years, where am I at? I'm not having a midlife crisis, but have I accomplished what I wanted to accomplish by this point? And I was reminded of, I think the verse is in James. I can't remember off the top of my head, but basically the earnest prayer of a believer. I'm going to totally butcher this. I wish I could memorize verses. I'm not a memorizer. But basically, it's like the earnest prayer will accelerate it. So for me, as I'm thinking about, okay, 36 years, maybe I haven't done what I wanted to do. Maybe I have, I don't know. But if I want to accomplish something, I can just seek God in that, and he's going to accelerate that time frame for me. Because with God, all things are better, faster, more efficient, more effective, whatever, fill in the blank. So I just need to invite him in. And if I'm pursuing something that he wants me to pursue, he's going to open up the doors. He's going to give me the blessings. He's going to make it so that I can condense time. But the problem is, if I don't invite him in and I start a partnership or I start a new business that isn't his will, then why would I expect him to accelerate that time frame for me? And I'll be honest, like, I haven't always thought that way. I should ask God about this, this new partnership, this new business. And I did last year for the first time. I was like, I should start praying about these things before I make a decision. And in one case, God said no. And I was like, but God, are you sure? And
such a good idea.
But it was one of those things where it's like, no. And it wasn't necessarily a no. It was more of a not yet, but potentially the door was still open, like slightly, for some time in the future. And funny enough, a few months later, something happened. And I was like, God, that's why you told me not to partner up with this person. Because, whatever that thing that happened would have created conflict and could potentially have led me down a bad path. And so I think it's important you invite God into those businesses, relationships, whatever it is that you're pursuing. Invite him. He wants to be part of your every being. He wants to be part of every decision. Sometimes you're like, what should I have for breakfast? Well, God doesn't care about that. Okay, maybe he doesn't care about what you're eating for breakfast. He wants you to be self-sufficient, but he certainly wants you to thank him for the food that you're about to eat. So really inviting God into the most intimate moments you're having, as well as the biggest decisions that you're making.
So true. He says in all of our ways, when we acknowledge him, he will make your path straight.
Yes.
And that, we don't realize what that truly looks like sometimes and acknowledging God is recognizing that this opportunity is a gift from God. This, relationship, my spouse, my children, the friendships that he has brought into my life, the sun that's out, the clouds rolling by, the grass that we walk on. In all of your ways, when you acknowledge him, the reason why that's so important is we recognize our need for our Father and how he directs us. And we don't feel like it's this big void of darkness that we're blindly groping around and hoping that something good will come of our life. We then walk with purpose because we know that our footsteps are ordered of the Lord.
Yeah.
And that is when you're able to walk with that it is a huge burden that lifts off your shoulders, because now you have someone who's got your back. Mm-hmm. You have someone that you can go to counsel for. And there's a lot of scriptures in the Bible that talks about counsel. And you can have wise counsel and you can have not wise counsel. Yep. And you look at the rulers and the kings in the Bible, and the kings that actually sought counsel from God, the people flourished. The kingdom flourished. They lived in abundance. But the ones that wanted nothing to do with the counsel of God, and they wanted to basically make the decisions in their own eyes and what they thought was best, not only did it affect their life, but it affected everyone in that kingdom. So we see these vicious cycles of, the ones that listened and the ones that turned a deaf ear. And I tell you what, when you are listening and you're tuning out those distractions and you're, seeking God's wisdom, the cool thing about it is not only does it unlock a whole other level of understanding, but the deeper you go, the deeper you keep going. Mm-hmm. Like there's no end to it. And I never realized that for the longest time. Like you kind of think that at some point there's kind of a cap to it, and you're just like, oh, this is great. I kind of, I'm doing better and I'm growing and all of these things. But you start to realize the deeper that you go, there is so much depth to who God is. Yeah. And what he can do with your life that you had no idea that he would be able to do, because it would not even enter into your brain. Like that's the beauty of seeking him first and centering everything around that, is that depth just keeps going deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's why, you can't go further enough until we truly meet him on the other side, and there's definitely a lot of beauty in that.
Yeah.
But I could talk about a lot of this stuff all day. Like this has been such a wonderful conversation, but there is one other thing on my heart that I would love to ask you before we kind of wrap up the episode. There's a lot of people that might be listening, even maybe they've made some poor decisions. And maybe they are living in that deficit mindset and they don't know how to get out of it. They feel stuck. They've been hurt. They have made mistakes. Maybe they're reaping consequences for things that they've done that they shouldn't have, and they feel that there's no hope. What would be your words to encourage them today and give them hope?
So the first thing I would say is forgiveness. And if you feel that somebody hurt you and you're in the situation you're in because of what somebody else did, I know forgiveness can be very difficult, but it's not actually for the other person, it's for you. Because when you sit in that misery, when you sit in that bitterness towards that person, you can't get out of that. You just, it grows, like, when you make bread and it grows, like that grows inside of you.
Like all the sourdough mamas out there, like.
I was like, what's the visual I'm looking for here? It's bread when it grows. Yeah. And so I think it's important that you have to find a way to let it go. And sometimes you might be in that situation because of something you've done. Maybe you've let yourself down. Maybe you've let other people down, but you can't move forward until you forgive yourself. And it might be very hard at first. It might just be words you're saying and you might not believing it. But the more you repeat those words, I forgive myself, I forgive so-and-so, the more you repeat those words, you start to let go little by little by little. And I've experienced this in my life where I've been wronged. We've all been wronged in one way or another. But every time this person would come to mind, I would feel this bitterness towards them, like almost like a jealousy, like I don't want them to succeed. I hope, they got what's coming to them kind of thing. And I realized I was holding on to bitterness because I didn't fully forgive them. But when I started saying, you know what, I forgive them. I wish them well. I hope they flourish. I hope that they wronged me, but I hope they realize one day that what they did wasn't right. But I hope that doesn't stop them from growing. That doesn't keep them from accomplishing their goals, from doing great things in their life. And I hope that Jesus meets them wherever they're at. And so the more I started to have that attitude towards them, the more I could actually think about that person and not feel anger and bitterness in my heart. And it's not going to happen overnight. It takes time. But every time, literally, like every time I would feel an ounce of bitterness, I would just pray for that person, like immediately, because I truly believe the way to fight bitterness, the way to fight anger is with prayer. And it might seem counterintuitive, but the Bible says pray for your enemies. And so the only way that I can move past this is to pray for my enemy when I feel that I have bitterness in my heart. And what would happen? Well, immediately I can't keep the bitterness in my heart when I'm saying, God bless this person, help their business grow. Like just can't sit in the same sentence in the same room together. Right. Yeah. And so what would happen is I would gain, hope for this person, and I would let go of the bitterness and I would let go of the anger. And like I said, it's a process. It takes time, but that's the first thing that I would recommend for anybody that's in a low place, whether they've wronged somebody else, whether they know they're guilty, whatever the case may be, just find forgiveness for other people, find forgiveness for yourself, and just pick yourself up. Like it could be so much worse. When you think about it, like we live, especially if your listeners are based in the United States, we live in the greatest country in the world. No matter what happened to you, financially, you can get yourself back up. Now, obviously there's other issues that I'm not going to talk about because there's, trauma and all sorts of other things that people are dealing with. And in some cases, you may need to seek professional help. But no matter what situation you're in, it actually could be worse. And so count your blessings every day, even when you're down. Be grateful. My favorite quote is, the height of your joy is measured by the depth of your gratitude. So as long as you're grateful, even in those hard moments, be grateful because there's a lesson. There's a growth opportunity. And you won't win the medal. You won't win the race by being comfortable. You'll win the race by getting uncomfortable. And some of that, discomfort could be just you being down for a season, being in the valley for a season. But you just got to pick yourself back up and just move forward.
Yeah, that's so true. When we all fall down, and sometimes we wait and, we sit there hoping someone will see us and will pick us back up. And in fact, I have a funny story about that. So, it's really dumb, but it's so funny, the things that happen to you in life. And it's like, oh, wow, I can actually apply a really deep principle to this. So during COVID, this was when things, of course, in Florida, we experienced COVID so differently than most other places in the world, actually. But I had to go into this store after church one day when things were starting to open up a little bit, but everybody was still petrified, And that day, I don't wear heels very often, which is so ironic because my podcast talks about heels, and I know that's a whole other side story, but I very rarely wear heels.
Oh, that's so funny.
Because I'm such a klutz. Well, this one day I decided to wear these heels, and not only did I wear these heels, but I wore this straight skirt, like a denim type skirt. Yeah. I'm in the store walking down the center of the aisle in these ridiculous heels, and my foot waffled and I tripped, and we're all wearing masks. Everyone's social distancing. I couldn't get up. So, in the middle, I tried to get up. I fell down 3 times. I was mortified at this point. I crawled from the center of the aisle to these shelves. And I sat there and I thought, no, everybody walked past me. Oh. Nobody was, you can't touch anyone. You can't help, everyone was afraid of, COVID. So I'm sitting there. I was so embarrassed. I'm in a skirt, so there's no ladylike way of getting back up gracefully. I'm crawling. Everyone's watching me crawl because no one would help me across the entire aisle to hoist myself up in these ridiculous shoes. And, I was done. I thought this is the most mortifying day of my life. This has been absolutely horrible. And I look back at it now and I laugh because the really weird thing about that situation that I was in, besides the fact that if I had a camera on me, I must have looked absolutely ridiculous. The funny thing is that when you fall, and sometimes if I would have waited around hoping that someone would help me up, I probably still would have been there for a really long time. Sometimes you do have to, and sometimes you go through situations that are humbling. or, embarrassing, or, you did something stupid, or like for me, it was an accident and I shouldn't have been wearing the heels, like whatever. Like, you go through those situations and you have to get yourself back up though. You can't blame. I could have sat there and blamed all these, COVID and my shoes and, I shouldn't have stopped here on the way home from church. Like whatever. Where was my husband during all this?
Yeah, Dale, where were you?
Dale, like he always drops me off. He won't go in anywhere. He drops me off. I run in and so.
But that, I think that's so interesting. And I've had this lesson before, but that is such a powerful lesson that you can now reflect on. And it's a funny story, by the way. So that makes it even better. But the lesson is that no one is coming to save you.
Yeah.
Like truly, we're all waiting for a savior. We're all waiting for somebody to pay off our debt, to help us make more money, to give us a raise, but nobody's coming to save you. Nobody cares more about, I've said this before, your career, your family, your friends, your life, whatever. Nobody cares more about those things than you. So don't expect somebody else to come in and save you. You have to take the action. It's on you. If you want to be in a better situation, if you want to stand again, you're the one who has to crawl and figure out her way how to get the right shelf and the right support to pick yourself back up. And
get out of there.
It's sad because so many people are waiting for a savior. So many people are waiting for the government and, I'm not going to get into politics, but they're waiting for somebody to save them. And the problem is nobody's coming to save you. You just have to save yourself.
No, you have to make the decision. You have to put in the work and recognize, okay, this happened. It sucks, but I have to get up. I have to get out. And guess what? I don't wear those shoes again. I had no business wearing them. I don't do well in that. You learn a lesson and don't do that. Don't do it again. Yeah. I see so many people that they blame everyone for their problems, and they're stuck in something that happened in 1983, and they haven't gotten over it, and then they wonder why their situation and their circumstances or their finances or their relationship hasn't changed, because you're sitting there wallowing in it. Imagine, if I would have sat there and wallowed around in the aisle, like that would have been, you can't do that. You have to. It was so.
That is such a funny story. I love it.
But good principles, can apply. And sometimes you have to look at things with a little bit of a sense of humor. But very good words of wisdom. And thank you for sharing all of this with, our listeners today. And I feel like we should do a part 2 sometime, because there's so many more questions I'd love to ask you. Besides this.
Let's do it.
I think we just left at 11 years old, and then, we went right into the deep end of stuff. But thank you for being so transparent and sharing. Your wealth is so much more than money, but it's also our knowledge and our wisdom. And you have a lot of wealth in that area too. So thank you for sharing that. How can, I'm sure by now, people are listening, like, how can people follow you and continue to watch your story in your young 36 years? Continue as you're pondering, what have I done with my life?
What have I done? I need to do more.
Now I just want to know, well, oh my gosh, you've already done so much. Like now, what is there left to do? But I would, I'm a fan, of course, but what can other people, how can they follow you?
Yeah. So I'm most active on Instagram. I'm sure in the show notes, you'll probably put my link. Cause otherwise my spelling, so it's Andreea with 2 E's. So anybody that's going to try to look me up, they're going to be like, I can't find her. Make sure you put the 2 E's in there. But also, if I can share, I actually just started a brand new podcast called The Heart of Worship. And the first episode actually released today. So if you want to find me on there, for anybody that is interested in more of my my devotionals, thoughts I have about God, about how he wants me to live. If you want to hear me sing a song, which by the way, Rachel, until you posted that song on Instagram the other day. I had no idea you could sing. So girl, we got to do a duet together or something. That would be so much fun.
Such a beautiful voice. Yeah, that would be amazing. I'm so excited. I didn't realize the episode actually is out. So I'll have to go find the show. And
yeah,
I saw that you were going to do it, and the little clip of the Heart of Worship. And I love that song.
Thank you.
Oh,
it just released today, so I'm going to promote it today. I was actually just figuring things out. I was like, Apple Podcasts, why aren't you live with my episode? I had to do a couple of things to get it all working properly, but I think we're good now. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on most platforms. So you can connect with me, Heart of Worship Podcast on Instagram. Listen to the show, and hopefully you get some really good nuggets. I just want to share my heart. It's really a passion project for me. I wanted, like, obviously I've got so many different sides to myself. I've got like the money side and the really nerdy side, but then I've got the really deep introspective relationship side. And for me, it all starts with Jesus, because if I didn't have Jesus, I wouldn't have anything else in my life. He truly is my peace, my rock, my salvation. And so I wanted to create a podcast that would reflect my heart and my heart of worship and what that means to me. So the first episode is out. Please check it out. Beautiful. And stay tuned for more.
I'm so excited.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I'll make sure to link that as well. How beautiful. I just love it. So, well, thank you again so much. This has been amazing. And, we will continue to just follow your journey and be inspired by what God is doing in your life and in your work and everything. So thank you again so much for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, friends, I just want to thank you for listening today. And if this show has meant something to you, please leave a review or rating on whatever platform you're listening to. Also, make sure you follow the show. This helps me continue bringing episodes like this where women can share their stories and link arms together. I hope you feel inspired and refreshed. Now get out there and hustle, girlfriends.